Watching the Volk and Islam fight, my first thoughts were Islam can box. He can strike and he's scary. Like, he strikes, he counters. His timing is unnoticed. I wouldn't want to say. And this is going to give me a lot of weird emotions, or the people are going to feel weird about this. But the way Islam counters is so similar to Conor McGregor. So similar. I kid you not. Hey guys, welcome to the False Nine podcast. Here with episode 143. We are here with another episode. It's Tuesday. If you guys had the day off yesterday, must be nice. I hope you guys enjoyed your Monday. And if not, shout out to all the people that worked, and kudos to you for working. But I'm jealous for the people that were off and got paid, because that would have been nice to be off on a Monday. So I want to start off by saying thank you. For the views, the love, the engagement on these posts recently. I've never had that happen before, I guess you could say. The account's really close to, Instagram account's really close to hitting 1,000 followers. I've never gotten an account organically to 1,000 followers. I've in the past had accounts with a few thousand, but it was never organic. So that feels really good. I forgot how. That account's been like that since we started the podcast. To be honest with you, about like 2 years, yeah. Because I remember I had an old one and it had fake followers on there fake followers, whatever. And then I was like, nah, this is not gonna work out for me. Like, this is gonna be a pain in the butt, or it's gonna bite me in the ass later. So let me just start from zero, and that's what we did. We started from zero and 800 followers. And we're pretty close to hitting 1,000, so that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I feel cool, you could say. So thank you. YouTube video did amazing. It crushed. I forgot, it was like 600 something views. So one of my best videos, second to best if I'm not mistaken. But I was shocked. I was surprised, and I got to look at that video and understand why I did so good to kind of put out the same content or same formula, and then make it work for more people can see us. And so I'm really happy about that, really proud about it, and I'm really thankful for the people who have watched and commented and like and share, subscribe, everything, but most importantly just giving me that watch time, and giving me an opportunity to just to entertain you, I guess, for a little bit. If it's 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, or the whole episode, really, really just appreciate it. It's pretty cool. But enough of that. Today's episode, if you guys haven't seen the title, it's, me rewatching the Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski fight. And really good fight. And I want to start off by admitting that Islam won the fight, and I'm going to break it down. So, I watched the fight again on, I think, Sunday. No, Friday or Saturday night. It was either Friday or Saturday night. I think that same night this weekend I watched like about 10 fights. And most of them were all Islam and Charles, because I just kind of wanted to, I was like, I know I'm not crazy, right? So, again, watching the Volk and Islam fight, my first thoughts were Islam can box. Like, he can strike and he's scary. Like, he strikes, he counters. His timing is unnoticed, I wouldn't want to say. And this is going to give me a lot of weird emotions, or the people are going to feel weird about this. But the way Islam counters is so similar to Conor McGregor. So similar. I kid you not. Because when I was watching that fight, I saw Volk throw these amazing strikes, and the way he snuck in there to get close to Islam, and you just see Islam so fast with the counter. Like, as soon as Volk's fist is right here to Islam, like, he's already throwing that counter, and I'm like, this guy is impressive on the feet. And then I saw the Charles fight, and I thought the same thing, and I'll get to that a little bit further. So, I'm thinking, I was like, dang, Islam can box, he can strike. And I say that surprisingly because I didn't pay much attention to that. And, you got all these emotions when you're watching the fight for the first time, and you're nervous and you're rooting for your guy, da-da-da-da. And in this mind space, I was just very analytical, very, carefully rewatching, replaying stuff, and really looking at it like frame by frame, things like that, and understanding how the fight went and why did the result, go that way. So I want to start by saying that, and Volk is a bad man. That's all I got to say too. Like, he's so fast. He was switching up his stances like that, which was crazy to see. And oh man, it was a good ass fight. I mean, that's all I got to say. But I want to show, not show, but I guess you could say, like, pull up the stats here, the fight that kind of stood out to me. Total strikes thrown, and this is what I'm going to talk about. Total strikes thrown for Islam was 135. He landed 70%, and Volk had about 255, so a little bit over double, and landing at 64%. And the reason why I bring this up, because it's just like, though obviously Islam got the points for him, or kind of a little bit on his side, because the fight is so close. So you want to find where are the differences, where was one person better than the other, right? Because the fight was tight, it was close, it was really hard to decide this fight, and you got to look at it. It was like, well, who was more accurate? It was Islam was more accurate, so you kind of lean on that side for that. But also, every time Islam threw, or Volk would throw and Islam would counter, or Islam threw and Volk was there, and he just threw way more. He threw double. He threw double than Islam did, right? So and just shy away from a 64% to 70%. Like, that's it's impressive for Volk to be that accurate, throwing double the punches, because if you throw more, you're gonna be less accurate, you're gonna get tired, and the fact that he kept it that close was really impressive for Volk. But that's one thing I look at and I was like, man, like, Islam took more damage to the face or to his whole body, but he landed a little bit more accurately than Volk did. So I can kind of understand, why that happened. And while I was watching the fight, and you look at these things and you're thinking about these things, you kind of start to see these things throughout the fight. And, you see Volk more active. He looks like he's the one controlling the fight in my eyes and as a fan. So then we get to the significant strikes. Volk, he did 70 out of 143, which is 49%. And Islam did 57 out of 95, which puts him at 60%. So Volkanovski still landing more significant strikes to Islam Makhachev. And, a little bit, about like 10% more. But Islam threw less, but just landed more. And that's where so Islam took more damage, but he landed more accurately. So now you got to decide, how do I, I guess, divide this fight? How do I decide this fight? And that's where it kind of, it could get really, tricky, you could say, or whatever the words may be. So Islam was more accurately throughout the fight, but Volkanovski, he threw way more. He threw more and was not too far away of accuracy compared to Islam Makhachev, and put more damage to Islam. That's what Volk did. He did put more damage to Islam, because we can see it on paper and on the fight, and also on Islam's face. So now you got to start, now let's go on to the next one, which is takedowns. So Islam Makhachev got 4 out of 9, 44%, and Volkanovski went 0 for 4. So, Volk got a 0 percentage there, and Islam got 44. And you look at that, and I'm like, damn, he got more takedowns, and Volk got none. But the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, out of those 3 takedowns that he got taken down, Volkanovski got up minute later, a few seconds later. So again, Islam gets the takedown, kudos for him, or points for him, right? Volkanovski gets up from the takedown, but are we giving him points? Are we giving him any, how do I call it? Like, is that in the decision making, in the point system, like, for getting up? Because getting taken down is one thing, but then recovering and getting back up is another thing. And that was impressive from Volkanovski, to be able to get up, being like on the ground, on your back at some points, or on your shoulders on some points, and you got someone like Islam Makhachev all over you, and you can get up, and that's impressive. So I don't know if they didn't give those like if that was a factor on the points or on the scorecard for Volkanovski or not. And another big thing that stood out to me is that Volkanovski had one knockdown. He knocked down Islam Makhachev, and I want to say that was on the last round where he knocked him down, and Volk took his back and started grounding, pounding, those type of things. And then that's where he landed big shots, and he had ground control time, and he was landing at the same time. So now you look at this fight, and if you want to look at it on paper, well technically Islam, he was more successful that night, you could say, with what he threw. When we're looking at it paper, he was more successful, but Volkanovski risked more. He was more active and a little bit less accurate than Islam. And I mean, he got the knockdown. So I mean, it was a very, very hard fight to call and to score. And I understand why Islam Makhachev won that fight, and he won that fight because he was just more accurate and more successful that night. That's why he won the fight. Now, was he got beat up? Yeah, I mean that's really it. He got beat up, and who was more? I mean, I guess who was more healthy at the end of the fight, you could say. And in my opinion, it was Volk. He came on top. He finished the fight strong. Nobody got to ground and pound during the fight besides Volk. You look at Islam's history with his takedowns. Nobody recovers from those. Once he takes you down, it's like it's a wrap. The only one that was able to give him a hard time was Volk and Charles. Everyone else that he took to the ground, he either submitted them or ground and pound, and took them to deep waters, and that was it. So again, I don't know how you're scoring the fight. What you're like, wow, Volk got up, or is it very like technical? These are the rules. This is how we score the fight, and this is how the decision gets made. And as a fan, I can understand, like, if that's how the rules are of scoring this fight, of who was a more successful fighter that night, then yeah, you give it to Islam Makhachev because he was more successful. And again, with the strikes, the significant strikes, and then the takedowns. So I can kind of see why I went to his favor. And I feel like there's a lot of fights in the UFC that we think that our guy won, and because of the accuracy and things like that of stats, then that's why they give it to the other person. And I really hope over time that starts to change in the UFC, where it's not just about maybe as accurate or as successful with what they throw or what they produce. If it was a successful punch, a successful takedown, or X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. I still think that as a fan, I'm always going to say, Volk won that fight, and it's like, but if I'm being real and we're looking at it in a technical aspect, yeah, Islam won the fight. He won that fight. And I mean, I don't, how do I say it? Like, I go kind of back, and people say that I hate on Islam, and I don't hate on him, but we give him a lot of praise, and he hasn't shown in the UFC that he's that guy. He beat one guy that happened to be everybody in his division, which is Charles Oliveira. But when you fight somebody like Volkanovski, who is strong and probably more stronger at 155, and you're not someone like Islam Makhachev, who's really good at and relies a lot on their takedowns. When you start to close that down, how good are you on your feet? And he showed that he's a beast on the feet. Like I said, he reminded me of Conor McGregor when I watched the fight, and I was just impressed. I was like, man, this guy can counter, and you can see Volk throughout the fight start respecting the strikes, in the later rounds, especially around, I don't know if it was, I want to say it was round 3, where he got caught a few times, and watching some slow-mos on Reddit today, I mean, Islam's just impressive, and more kudos to Volk for moving up and taking this fight and doing what he did to Islam, and it's just like, wow. So that was that fight. Again, I think Islam won the fight technically, you know, you could put it like that. And I'm not hating on him, but we're looking at it like that. Like, yeah, he won the fight. I mean, if this is how we're scoring the fight, then he won the fight, and that's that. You know, again, Volk to me was more active, not as successful as Islam Makhachev. You know, Islam was just more successful for the night, and even though he got beat up more than Volk did. So I'll leave that like that. You know, I don't want people to start thinking that I'm hating on Islam, but I'm just not convinced, you know, and as a fan, I know I'm not nobody special or anything like that, but the way I watch sports and the way I, you know, I guess engage with the sport, it's just like, hey, like I want to see, you know, like Izzy, you know, Charles, how he bounced back. We never really got to see Conor McGregor ever bounce back from anything, but we would have loved to. But he dominated and kept dominating. He came back and beat up Cerrone. You know, he couldn't get it down with Dustin. Who else had came back? I mean, Dustin Poirier had a few losses in his career, but he's learned to fight and come back and beat, you know, someone like Michael Chandler in the past, Justin Gaethje. I would love to see when Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje fight again, and when like Bill Neal Darush fights one of them too, that would be that would be dope. We seen Justin Gaethje, you know, he fought Khabib, and I forgot who he came back and fought. I don't know if it was Chandler or someone else, but you know, those guys have fought each other, and I feel like Islam hasn't. You know, he hasn't fought, and I'm going to repeat this again, he hasn't fought like top 5 guys besides Charles. And he's talking about going up and fighting at 170, and I'm like, hey man, like slow the fuck down. Like, and I said this last time, you got to slow down. You got to fight people in your division. You got to show that you're the champ. You can't just, oh, I beat this one guy, I'm going to just run away with the gold and that's it, and nobody else can have none, you know. And it's just like, in my opinion, a real champion, John Jones is a good example, defending the belt. Anderson Silva, like, you got to defend the belt. You know, you can't just be good for one night, you know, and you kind of lost it when you fought Volk. And I feel like they, you know, I know he was more successful and da-da-da, but it's just like, that was a risk that you took, and you almost, that risk almost cost you and the whole division a situation. And again, like, I want to see Islam just be dominant. That's it. I want to see him fight guys, you know, fighting twice a year and kicking ass. Izzy's doing it. John Jones has done it. Khabib did it. Like, Charles has done it or is doing it. That's what I want to see. But you got Islam, who, again, and I said this on the last episode, getting a career, having not handouts, but it's starting to seem that way, especially that he's talking about going up and this and that. And I'm like, you know, why? I don't know if people don't want to fight him and people are okay with him being as champion, but as a fan, I want to see him compete the dangerous and most nastiest guys at 155. That's it. I want to see him defend the belt, and I just want to see him be dominant, and I want to see him dominate at 155. Until he does that, then I'm just, you know, he just won't. I just won't be like, that guy's the guy, you know. Khabib has done it. Charles partially has done it. He has one guy to beat, and he has done it. You know, I can't really give it to Conor because he didn't really. I mean, he beat really good guys, but when things got really competitive at 155, like, you know, we've seen him fold. I mean, he folded against Nate, he folded against Dustin twice, so there's that. But that's all I want to see from Islam Makhachev. That's it. I just want to see you dominate, and I want to see you defend your belt, and I want to hear and still, you know, against these dangerous guys, and that's it. I was like, you're champion. You beat one guy, and then you're trying to fight a guy that went up, and I don't know. It's just a little weird. I got mixed emotions, but again, these guys are all killers. They'll all kick my ass, and I have mad respect for them, and I love all of them because I love the UFC. You know, that's it. So let's move on to the next one. Damn, 20 minutes already. So the next one I wanted to talk about was, I rewatched Islam and Charles fight, right? And that fight was hard to see as a Charles fan. As a big Charles fan, it was really tough to see because Islam dominated Charles in every aspect. In every aspect, he dominated Charles that night. On the striking, most of the time on the ground, and that was it. And it was a Charles that I don't recognize, you could say, as well. Charles takes a lot of punches, but I honestly feel like Charles had no answers that night for Islam Makhachev. I don't know if he was overly confident, like maybe he's like, I beat all these guys, like this guy's going to be just like all of them, and like Islam Makhachev said, like, there are levels, and Charles Oliveira got humbled that night, and he got beat up and he got beat, and I think Charles learned a lot from that fight, and now the way he looked against Dariush is just like very impressive, And again, Islam was the better man, striking on the ground. The things that stood out to me the most, and one thing that I'm really confident in, and I don't know why I'm confident, but when they run it back, and I hope they run it back, is that it's going to be Islam's still going to beat Charles standing up. Like I said, Islam striking is so similar to Conor McGregor. So similar. If you guys pay attention, it's so similar. It's crazy. And it's just because how fast and how good he is at counterattacking and just how he lands accurately. And that's why he beat Volk. And Charles is not going to, not that he doesn't stand a chance, but it's better for Charles if the fight is mixed. He needs to throw strikes and kicks, and then if it goes to the ground, attempts to submissions. There were some attempts on the first fight, and Islam was just strong, right? So now that's something that Charles has to prepare for, and I think if he does it right, he can find, if he's smart enough, because I think he has more weapons than Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is probably the best striker at 155 right now, and probably the best guy on the ground, right? So if Charles uses all his weapons at the best ability he can that night, I truly believe he can get it done. And I think it's going to get it done as a submission. And the only reason why I say that, and I'm going to jump to this other fight here, is when I rewatched Charles and Dustin Poirier fight. I said it right. I hope I watched that fight again, and Dustin was landing bombs on Charles's face. Bombs. The first round was pure dominance by Dustin Poirier. And I was just like, wow, I don't know how Charles didn't go down. I mean, he did at once, but I don't know how he just didn't get TKO'd. And I was like, this guy has a chin. And that's one thing that I think goes a little bit unnoticed, is the chin of Charles Oliveira. So it goes, that first round goes like that, and then you see Charles come back from that, and he starts mixing it up with the kicks, with the strikes, in the clinch, and next thing you know, he finds a vulnerability and jumps on the back. And we're like, what the fuck is this? And that version of Charles Oliveira has amazed me the most. When Dustin Poirier just lands those shots, look what it did to Conor. And look how Charles adapted to that and took him on the chin like a champ. And it's just like, wow. So when he fights Islam, I think it's going to be very similar. I think he should fight like how he fought Dustin. When he fights Islam again. That's my opinion, because that fight, I mean, I don't know how, after the first round, I was like, I don't know how Charles wins this fight. Obviously, we knew he did, but I'm like, how did he do it? And Dustin, I don't know if he chokes or he's not that good, who knows, but he's a really good boxer. And I mean, when he lands, he fucking lands. And Chandler had a comment about that he has the heaviest hands, and I think a lot of people would agree. So, yeah, I mean, Charles is a work in progress, and I mean, and we all love him, and I'm going to end the podcast on why we love him. But I want to state that I don't hate on Islam. I don't got nothing against him or anything like that. It's just that, I just want to see you dominate, and I want to see you be on top in the division. That's it. That's all I want to see. Right. So the last thing I want to mention here, one of the last good things I'm going to say about Charles and Islam, well, just more about Charles, but the reason why I think a lot of people, including myself, love Charles Oliveira is because of his journey in the UFC, right? You know, this guy got in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, about 11 years ago. And it took him 9 years to figure it out in the UFC. And after 9 years, you know, he gets that fight with Ferguson and beats Ferguson. And then he has his title shot against Chandler. And, I mean, we know what happens after that. But, you know, you see a guy who was, you know, up and down career in the UFC, just stay relevant enough to stay in the UFC for 9 years. And I think a lot of us have a life like that. You know, we all experience a life that's going up and down, inconsistency, you know, kind of, you know, got some glory and then it kind of goes away. You kind of give up and you're like, you know, and you'll get setbacks, whether it's an injury, you get a fire from your job. You know, it's just very similar. His career is very similar to a person, an everyday person's life. So then I don't know if people say that it's his daughter, you know, but I mean, 9 years later, something clicks, and in humans, as people, after, you know, whether it's 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, something clicks on our mind, just like it did on Charles, and he turned it up. You know, he turned it up, and he started to believe in himself, and he had this charisma and this swag with him. It's just like us as people do when we're, you know, coming up, and whether it's in a job or it's some type of career, or, you know, in content or content creation in general. So, you know, you look at Charles and you start to think like, hey, this guy's just like me. You know, he was in the UFC for 9 years, so he took his opportunity and he did something with it, and then he got the glory, and it was such an amazing moment. You know, and as a human, we get those moments too where we are on top of the world and we win, and then boom, reality fucking hits you in the jaw, and you got to start not over, but you get knocked down pretty hard, and now you got to climb that mountain again. And then Charles Oliveira, you know, he's looking up at the mountain, looking at Islam Makhachev, and he has, you know, a guy, Beneil Dariush, who's been climbing this mountain and is ready to compete for gold. And then Charles Oliveira and Beneil fight, and we know what happens. And then again, now you're so close of getting gold again. And I think that's why we all love Charles Oliveira, because of his journey and how he was on top of the world, and that was taken from him. And he took that and he got humbled, and now he's going to come back and, you know, more ready than ever, I'm sure. You know, whether he wins a fight or not, it's different, but he's going to be ready. And I think that Charles Oliveira is a good reflection of people, you know, of ordinary people, and we all just relate to him. And I think that's why we all love him, you know, because we've seen him at his worst and we've seen him at his best. And that's why we love Charles Oliveira. Peace.